Hello, dear students. This is our second session on the chapter Paths to Modernization, and we are going to talk about the rise of Japan and the Meiji Restoration of 1868. In 1853, USA sent Commodore Matthew Perry, and you can see his picture on the right. It's basically a caricature, and he was sent to Japan to sign trade treaties. Now, Japan lay on the route to China, which USA saw as a major market. And also, USA wanted a place to refuel their ships in the Pacific Ocean. So, Perry's arrival had an important effect on Japanese politics. A movement started against the trade and diplomatic relations and foreign intervention. So, taking a look at this map of the world, as you generally see, you can see China at one end and USA on the other. But the world is not flat. So, take a look at it as we would see it on the globe. Now, you can see, if you see it on the globe, you can see how USA and China are there, and in between there is the Pacific Ocean. So, now you can take a look as the ships would move from USA through the Pacific Ocean to China, and in between there is a Japan, which could be a fueling station. The Meiji Restoration in 1868, this was a movement that forcibly removed the shogun from power and brought the emperor to Edo, and the emperor gained power again. Edo was made the capital and it was renamed Tokyo, and Tokyo, of course, means the eastern capital. Now, this Meiji Restoration was a political as well as a social revolution in Japan in 1866-69, and this ended the power of the Tokugawa shogun and returned the emperor to a central position. Some Japanese scholars and leaders wanted to learn from the new ideas of Europe because by this time Europe had advanced remarkably. And some scholars wanted to exclude the Europeans but ready to adopt their technologies. So, whatever development had taken place, they wanted to adopt that. Some argued for gradual and limited opening to the outer world. The government now launched a policy, and the slogan of their policy was Fokoku Kyohi, which actually means rich country, strong army. So, actually, they wanted to redevelop their country in such a way that it would become a rich country with a strong army. For this, they had to make a lot of effort and they needed to create a sense of nationhood amongst the people and transform the subjects to citizens. Like subjects are like passive, who would do what the emperor would want them to do and say. Whereas if you transform them into citizens, they become equal participants and they would develop the spirit of nationhood, that nationality and nationhood, that it is their country and whatever best they can do to support in its development. So this idea had to be created. The new government also worked to build the new emperor system. Now, according to this system, officials were sent to study the European monarchies on which they planned to model their own. So, they went around to see how in European nations the monarch is revered and respected. So, now the emperor would be treated with a lot of respect and reverence, and he was considered as a direct descendant of the sun goddess. So the emperor was also shown as the leader of westernization. And they started various practices, like his birthday was celebrated as a national holiday. Then he wore Western style military uniforms. Then the edicts were issued in his name to set up modern institutions. Then the military and bureaucracy were also put under direct command of the emperor. The education system also was reconstructed and redefined. The Imperial Rescript on Education of 1890 urged the people to pursue learning, advance public good, promote common interest, because this would, overall change the population and make them important human resource. A new school system also began. Schooling was compulsory for both boys as well as girls, and by 1910, it was made almost universal. Tuition fees were minimal so that more and more people could send their children to schools. The curriculum was now based on Western models. But by 1870s, while emphasizing modern ideas, they also stressed importance on loyalty and study of Japanese history. The Ministry of Education exercised control over the curriculum and the selection of textbook as well as teachers training. So they decided what books would be there, what would be the syllabus, what all would be included in the curriculum, and how the teachers were to be trained to impart this education. Moral culture also had to be taught, and texts urge children to revere their parents, to respect their parents, to be loyal to the nation, and also become good and responsible citizens. All young men over 20 had to do a period of military service, and a modern military force was developed. A legal system was set up to regulate the formation of political groups, control the holding of meetings, and also impose very strict censorship. In all these measures, the government naturally had to face opposition, and even after a constitution was enacted, two groups remained outside the control of the government. The Japanese army pressed for a vigorous foreign policy to acquire more territory. And as a result of this, Japan defeated China in 1894-95 and Russia in the year 1904-5. Now they started modernizing the economy. Japan's first railway line was built between Tokyo and the port of Yokohama in 1870-72. Then the textile machinery was imported from Europe, and foreign technicians were employed to train the workers as well as to teach in universities and schools. And many Japanese students were sent abroad to learn what is happening in the Western world and bring back that knowledge here to develop the country further. In 1872, modern banking institutions were launched. Then companies like Mitsubishi and Sumitomo were helped through subsidies, and tax benefits were given to them so that they become major shipbuilders, and so that the Japanese could trade from now, and so that Japanese trade was from now carried in Japanese ships. Then Zaibastu is the term used for large business organizations that were controlled by individual families. They dominated the economy till after the Second World War. Now, in this period, the population was also rapidly rising. The government encouraged migration. They told the people to move to the northern island of Hokkaido, which was probably lesser populated and where the Ainu lived, and then also to Hawaiian Islands and to Brazil to reduce the pressure of population. Then 21% of the population lived in cities by 1925, and then by 35 this figure went up to 32%. The number of people in manufacturing also increased. Over half of those employed in modern factories were women, so a lot of women also were working outside. And the first modern strike in 1886 was organized by women. Tanaka Shozo was elected to the first House of Representatives. He launched the first agitation against industrial pollution. So we know when more and more industries are there, when modernization takes place, development takes place, production increases, and as a result of those industries, pollution does take place. So there are people who talk about this pollution and what could be done. So Tanaka Shozo was a son of a farmer in Japan. He participated in the popular rights movement in the 1880s, and this movement demanded constitutional government. And he was elected member to the first Diet. So Diet is the Parliament of Japan. He believed that the ordinary people should not be sacrificed for industrial progress. That is, industrial progress should take place, but as a result of that, people should not suffer. The Asia mine was polluting. So, of course, we know mining and all leads to pollution. So, it was polluting the Vataris River and it was ruining 100 square miles of farmland. Because this polluted water would be going into the farms and destroy the crops, and it was affecting 1,000 families. This agitation forced the company to take pollution control measures. So it was again something which was very, very important. And by 1904, as a result of these efforts, harvests were normal. The Meiji constitution was based on restricted franchise. That means everybody did not get the right to vote, and created a diet with limited powers. Diet is again, as I told you, the parliament. The emperor was the commander of the forces, and from 1890 this was interpreted to mean that the army and the navy had independent control. In 1899, the Prime Minister ordered that only serving generals and admirals could become ministers. And as a result of this, military was further strengthened. The expansion of Japan's colonial empire was connected with the fear that Japan was at the mercy of Western powers. Fukuzawa Yukichi was a leading Meiji intellectual, and he supported tradition by saying that Japan must expel Asia. The philosopher Miyake Setsuri, he argued that each nation must develop its special talents in the interest of world civilization. Then Yuko Imeri stood for westernization. He was a leader of the popular rights movement and he was demanding constitutional government. He admired the French Revolution's doctrine of natural rights of man and popular sovereignty, and he spoke for liberal education and would develop each individual. Freedom is more precious than order. That's what he said. Others also talked of voting rights for women. This pressure led the government to announce a constitution. Now, Fukuzawa Yukichi was born in a samurai family and he studied in Nagasaki and Osaka, learning Dutch as well as Western sciences and also English later on. In 1860, he went as a translator for the first Japanese embassy to USA. This provided him material for a book on the West written in the spoken style so that everybody could easily understand what he wrote. He established a school, and this school today has developed into the Keio University. He was one of the core members of the Merukusha. This is a society that promotes Western learning. In the encouragement to learning, he was very critical of Japanese knowledge. And he said that all that Japan has to be proud of is its scenery. So he advocated not just modern factories and institutions but also cultural essence of the West. That is the spirit of civilization. So he said we need to adopt that as well. His principle was heaven did not create men above men nor set men below men. So that is about equality. Everyone is born equal. Now, Japan also went through a lot of changes in the daily life. The new home, which they said in Japanese language, homo, was now instead of a large joint family as it were earlier. The new kind of home was the nuclear family, where the husband, the wife, and children lived together. The husband was the breadwinner; he went out to earn, and the wife was the homemaker. This concept of domesticity in turn generated demands for new types of domestic goods. So when nuclear families happened and they lived together, they wanted things for their own comfort. So new types of entertainment and new forms of housing also developed. So in 1920s, construction companies made cheap housing available so that the salaried people could also afford by paying in installments. New electric goods for the convenience of these nuclear families also were introduced, like the rice cooker, the American grill, the toaster. All these things were made for these new type of families. Transport in cities improved with the electric trams to make it easy for working people to go from their homes to their workplaces. Public parks were opened from 1878 and department stores began to be built where people could go and buy their grocery and everything together at one place. In Tokyo, the Ginza became a fashionable area. So this area, this new term came up, Jinbura, which was a combination of two words, Ginza, which was that fashionable area, and Burubura means walking aimlessly. So this fashionable area where people moved around and just strolled and maybe did some window shopping or just went there out to just experience that area. This new term came in was Jinbura. The first radio stations opened in 1925. Then Matsui Sumako, an actress, became a national star. So that's how new forms of entertainment came in, and these people, entertainers, became stars. And because of a portrayal of Nora in the Norwegian writer uh, Ibsen's Adol's House, movies began to be made in 1899, and soon there were dozen companies making hundreds of films. Then there's a new term came in, MOGA, which was an abbreviation for modern girl. And this showed the coming together in the 20th century of ideas of gender equality, where they depicted a cosmopolitan culture and a developed economy where women were more modern, who came out of their houses and went out for entertainment, maybe took up jobs also and drove cars. So women's car club was also started. In the 1930s and 40s, Japan launched wars to extend its empire in China and other parts of Asia. The war merged into the Second World War, which was taking place at that time, and Japan attacked USA at the Pearl Harbor. So Japan is showing its strength. A symposium was held on overcoming modernity, where they tried to debate and discuss how to combat the West while still being modern. A musician by the name of Moroi Saburo, he posed the question as to how rescue music from the art of sensory stimulation and instead use it for an art of spirit. It was not rejecting Western music but trying to find a way that would go beyond rewriting or playing Japanese music on Western instruments. The philosopher Nishitani Keiji defined modern as the unity of three streams of Western thought, and these three streams were Renaissance, the Protestant Reformation, and the rise of natural sciences. I don't think I need to explain, you've already studied all three. He argued that Japan's moral energy had helped it to escape colonization, and it was now its duty to establish a new world order, a greater East Asia. And for this new vision that would integrate science and religion was necessary. Now, after the defeat in World War II, Japan re emerged as a global economic power. So, reforms were carried out. Japan was, after the World War, reforms in Japan under US led occupation. Japan was demilitarized. A new constitution was introduced. This new constitution has an Article 9 which was called the No War Clause. Article 9 renounces the use of war as an instrument of state policy. Agrarian reforms were carried out to improve upon agriculture. Trade unions were re-established to look after the interests of the workers in factories and industries. And then effort was made to dismantle the Zaibastu, or the large monopoly houses that took control of business. Then political parties were revived, and the first post war elections were held in the year 1946, where women voted for the first time. So that was one more achievement. This rapid rebuilding of Japan's economy after its defeat was called a post war miracle. So it was a miracle where a country that had faced the horrors of a war was able to rebuild itself. The constitution was democratized, but even before that, Japan did have a historic tradition of popular struggles and intellectual engagement and how to broaden political participation. The social cohesion of pre war years was strengthened, allowing for a close working of the government, bureaucracy, and industry. US support as well as a demand created by Korean and Vietnamese wars also helped the Japanese economy. And as a result of all this, we could see Japan was strong enough to hold the Olympics in the year 1964 at Tokyo. They also set up high speed bullet trains, which was called Shinkansen. It was started in 1964, which ran at the speed of 200 miles per hour and later increased to 300 miles per hour. In 1960s, saw the growth of the civil society movements where people came forward to raise their voice against pollution, which was pollution from cadmium poisoning, mercury poisoning, mercury poisoning in Minamata, and air pollution. So people came forward to raise their voice, and as a result of this, Japan enacted some of the strictest environmental controls in the world. So, with this, we come to the end of modernization of Japan. In the next class, we will talk about China. So, thank you and have a nice day.